One wire, one war, one life. The story of how a simple piano wire trick changed air combat over New Guinea. Hell on Earth, New Guinea, 1943. If you think war is heroic marches and inspiring speeches, New Guinea will destroy that image in the first 5 minutes. There are no heroic marches here. Here, 40-degree heat that melts metal and mines simultaneously. Here, jungles where snakes drop from trees onto men, where malaria kills soldiers faster than Japanese bullets, where sweat never dries because the air itself feels like a wet towel. And in the middle of all this, the dusty airfield at Dobadura, a dirt strip carved out of the jungle, a few canvas hangars, fuel drums, and aircraft, P-38 Lightnings. They called them the Devil's Fork. Double fuselage, twin engines, cockpit in the middle. They looked like something from science fiction. In 1943, nothing like this existed anywhere in the world, except here, on this dusty strip in the jungle. But these machines had a secret problem, and only one man, one simple mechanic from Ohio, noticed it before anyone else. The man under the wing. His name was James McKenna, 30 years old, sergeant, mechanic of the 39th Fighter Squadron. Before the war, an ordinary auto mechanic from a small town. Not a hero, not a general, not a Lockheed engineer with a degree and a tie, just a guy who understood machines better than people. Every morning, before dawn, McKenna was already under the wing, checking cables, pulleys, control surfaces. While others slept, he listened to the airplane, literally, pressing his hand against the cable and feeling. And then one morning, August 16th, 1943, he stopped. He looked at the aileron cable, grabbed it with his fingers, pulled gently. The cable played. A small amount of slack, tiny, 3/8 of an inch, less than a centimeter. By factory standards, completely acceptable. An inspector would look and say, everything's fine. Technical Manual FM 140 says, within tolerance. But McKenna was not an inspector. He closed his eyes and imagined the aircraft in the air. Speed 500 kilometers per hour. A Japanese zero on his tail. The pilot pushes the control stick right, and that tiny bit of slack, that small play in the cable, creates a delay. Not a second, not half a second, 3/10 of a second. McKenna opened his eyes. 3/10 of a second at 500 kilometers per hour. That is 40 meters of space the aircraft travels before the wing begins to respond. 40 meters. In aerial combat, that is an eternity. In aerial combat, that is death. Why the zero was unbeatable. To understand what McKenna did, you need to understand the enemy. The Mitsubishi A6M0. The Japanese created it as the perfect fighter. Light as a feather, only 2.8 tons against 7 tons for the P-38. Maneuverable as a bird. A full 360-degree turn, 19 seconds. The P-38 needed 25. But the Zero's main weapon was not speed and not cannons. The Zero's main weapon was psychology. Japanese pilots knew one thing. If you pulled an American into a horizontal turning fight, he was yours. The Zero would start spinning. The P-38 would try to follow. But the heavy Lightning, with its cable delay, fell behind. Fell behind by that exact fraction of a second. The Zero would be slightly faster in the turn. The American would exit the turn and receive a burst in the tail. This happened again and again. American command issued an order, strict, mandatory. Never engage in horizontal combat with a Zero. Attack from above. Boom-zoom tactics. Dive, shoot, climb away. On paper, logical. In reality, over the jungles of New Guinea, the Zero still imposed its own conditions. Japanese pilots were experienced, cunning, aggressive. They knew how to lure. They knew how to create situations where the American had no choice, only the turning fight. And there, the P-38 died. Again, and again, and again. 8 minutes that changed everything. McKenna stands under the wing of Lieutenant Robert Hayes's P-38. In his hand, a piece of steel wire. the kind used to make piano strings. Thin, strong, unbending. 6 inches of wire, 15 centimeters. He bends it into the shape of the letter Z, inserts it into the cable system as a tensioner, between the cable and the pulley before the right aileron. Adds tension, 180 grams of pressure. That's it. 8 minutes of work. No new parts, no new design, no factory, no engineer. Simply, the slack was gone. Now when the pilot moved the stick, the signal went to the aileron instantly. No pause, no delay, no those damned 0.3 of a second. Aircraft and pilot, one single unit. McKenna hid the wire under the access panel. The inspector would not find it. If found, they would remove it, punish him, forbid it. But first, let Hayes fly. The morning no one forgot, August 17, 1943. Dawn over Huon Gulf. Lieutenant Robert Hayes taxied onto the runway. The P-38F roared with 2 engines. The ground trembled. Hayes accelerated, lifted from the dusty strip, and rose into the sky above New Guinea. A patrol, a routine patrol. 8 P-38's against unknown opposition. 20 minutes later, dots on the horizon. 12 zeros. The Japanese saw this. They knew the odds. 12 against 8. P-38's against zeros. They had done this hundreds of times. The tactics were rehearsed. Dive, pull the American into a turn, kill. The first zero dove toward Hayes, started pulling into a horizontal turn, and then something went wrong. Hayes pushed the stick. The P-38 responded, instantly, not after half a second, now, right now. The wing banked, sharply, precisely, like the crack of a whip. Hayes himself lost his footing for a moment. The aircraft responded differently, sharper, more alive. But reflexes took over. He pressed harder. Right bank, instant. Left bank, instant. Reversal, like a nerve impulse. The zero expected the familiar, the slow inner turn of the P-38. Instead, the lightning was hanging on his tail. First burst, first zero, fell. The second Japanese pilot threw himself into a saving left turn. Hayes, after him, without pause, without delay. The P-38 copied every movement like a shadow. Second burst, second zero, fell. The commander of the Japanese flight understood. Something was wrong. He turned, trying to get on Hayes's tail himself. An experienced pilot, an ace. He had done this dozens of times, but Hayes felt him. Reversed, sharply, instantly. The P-38 turned faster than the zero could aim. Third burst, 7 minutes, 3 zeros. The group returned to Dobodura without losses. Hayes landed, climbed out of the cockpit, stood silent for a few seconds, then said to the mechanic, "What did you do to this machine? It's alive." The underground revolution. McKenna did not answer officially, but that same night, he taught another mechanic. The next day, 2 more. Within a week, 12 P-38's at Dobodura had McKenna's wire. No orders, no documents, just between themselves. Tighten the cable before the pulley, like this. 5 minutes, and done. The mechanics understood. This was a violation. Technical Manual FM 140 prohibited unauthorized structural modifications. Court-martial, a real threat. Officially, they would remove it, forbid it, punish them. But they also understood something else. Every morning these aircraft took off, and some did not return. Boys of 20 years old, 22. Photographs of wives and mothers on the hangar wall, and a small piece of wire. That could change this. By September 1943, 50 P-38's had been modified. The statistics of the 39th Squadron changed quietly, invisibly. Kill ratio was 5 to 1. Became 19 to 1. By November, 40 to 1. Japanese pilots wrote in their reports, "The P-38 behaves unpredictably. Previous tactics are not working. Recommend reviewing combat instructions." Nightmare. On the other side of the front, imagine yourself as a Japanese ace. You are Kishikawa. 200 victories, the best of the best. The 0 is your instrument, an extension of your body. You close your eyes and feel the aircraft like your own hand. And you know, the P-38 is a heavy machine. It enters a turn slowly. If you manage to start the spin, it's yours. You had done this hundreds of times. And now, a new fight. A standard situation, a P-38 below you. You dive, pull into a turn, start spinning. Wait for the familiar. The lightning begins to fall behind. You come around to its tail. But the P-38 does not fall behind. It is there, beside you. It is matching your turn at the same speed. You increase your bank angle. It increases. You reverse. It reverses. Something has broken in the world. The laws of physics have changed. 30 seconds later, you are the one in someone's gun sight. It was not better tactics, not a better pilot, not a new aircraft. It was a piece of piano wire. Part 8. How the World Learned the Truth. October 1943. Dobodura Airfield. Scheduled inspection. An officer walked through the hangar checking a P-38. Opened an access panel. Saw something strange in the cable system. A piece of wire, bent into a Z. He did not understand what it was, but he understood. It was not on the blueprint. Scandal. Investigation. Questions. Who? Why? Why not according to the manual? McKenna did not hide. He explained, here is the slack, here is the delay, here is the wire, here is the result. 19-1, 40-1. The officer was silent, thought, then picked up the phone and called Lockheed. Lockheed engineers received the modified P-38. They tested it. Roll rate, plus 40%. Safety, within limits. G-load, holds. Conclusion, it works. Install on all aircraft. In the P-38J, factory tensioners, official, with blueprints, with stamps. MacArthur said, ground crews are heroes without rank insignia. McKenna received no medal. His name appeared in no official documents. He was discharged in 1945, returned to Ohio, opened an auto repair shop, fixed cars. What this really means. McKenna's story is not just a story about war. It is a story about how the world works. In the world, there is an enormous difference between by the rules and the right thing. The factory manual said, slack is within tolerance. The inspector said, everything is fine. The generals said, stick to boom-zoom tactics. And the pilots were dying. McKenna had no degree, had no authorization to modify the aircraft structure, had no right, but he had eyes, hands, and a question he asked himself, if I don't do this, which of the guys won't come back tomorrow? That is the difference between a person who follows instructions and a person who takes responsibility. The small wire, the big story. More than 10,000 P-38 Lightnings were built. They flew from New Guinea to Normandy. They shot down more than 1,800 enemy aircraft. They intercepted the aircraft of Admiral Yamamoto, the chief architect of Pearl Harbor, and destroyed it in the sky over the jungle. But perhaps the most important contribution to the P-38's victory was not the Lockheed factory, not General MacArthur, not the multi-million-dollar contracts. It was one mechanic, with 6 inches of piano wire, 8 minutes of work, and a question. What if this slack is killing people? War is not only generals and strategy. War is McKenna at 4 in the morning under the wing of an aircraft. It is hands that touch a cable and feel something wrong. It is the decision to break the manual, because life matters more than paperwork. History has names: Eisenhower, Patton, Nimitz. But there are also those whose names appear nowhere. McKenna from Ohio, a mechanic, a man with a wire, one of those who quietly, without medals, without speeches, without cameras, changed the course of the war.